All right, so let's talk about how we're going to begin our animal mosaic project. So I have printed out the image that you submitted. Okay, so each of you should be able to find those in a folder that will be with your substitute teacher. So they'll hand them out to you if you're ready for that. Okay, so here's my picture of the magpie. So the first thing I want to do is grab a marker, and so I'll have these set aside as well with your images. So just grab one, and I think a darker color works better. Just test over here. Yeah, let's actually use black markers. So I'll have some black markers out for you like this, permanent markers. Okay, and the first thing we want to do is just block out those bigger shapes that are going to turn into our tiles. So I like to start with the actual animal. Okay, and when we think about a mosaic, we never have too many pieces that are like really big. We have a lot of pieces that are smaller, okay? So I'd say we don't want pieces smaller than maybe, I don't know, a 500 won coin. And we don't want any pieces bigger than, like, I don't know, 1,000 won bill. Okay, so we want to kind of be in that range. All right, so let me first just start going over my shape here and some of the outlines. Okay, so first I'll kind of use the beak, and I'm looking for those major changes. So it could be major changes in color, or just like major sections of the body. Okay, so I'm just going to try to find those. I don't have to be like super perfect, but I do want to follow that picture. It's going to be a good guide. Okay, and again, some of these shapes I'm going to generalize, right? Like these feet are pretty detailed, and so you can see I generalized that shape into something like this. So I did like to use the black permanent marker because I can see my shape like this, okay? Now also for our mosaic, you're gonna be responsible for about a space like this, the size of your A4 paper. So we are gonna make some shapes in the background. For these, they're gonna be just more general shapes, okay? So I've already done that on this piece where I just started to kind of create some blobby shapes. There's nothing too specific there. You could get creative with this if you want to do like, you know, more specific, like, you know, square shapes or whatever you wanted to do. But I thought these were kind of nice, just they're kind of naturey, organic-y, and something like that. But yeah, I do want to fill up most of my page. So these are going to be the tile pieces that I create. Okay, so I've done that first. I'm going to set that aside and start preparing my clay. So for that I have the clay mat that we roll out our pieces on. I have my spacers again that we're very used to. For this it doesn't really matter the size. A little bit thicker is okay, but I just have to make sure they're the same. All right, and then I need my rolling pin. Okay, so before I start, I always like to know what shape of my slab I want. So remember for our face mugs, we wanted one that was really long. It didn't really matter how wide it was, right? But it had to be really long. For this, we actually want a piece that's going to fill this entire A4. So it's actually pretty big, all right? But it's going to be the full length of my mat, but it doesn't have to be the full width. Okay, so I just keep that in mind as I roll out my clay. So I do want to get a pretty big chunk of clay. And then remember, before we start rolling, we can just use our hands to kind of do a lot of that work for us. So I'm just going to start smushing that down a little bit. Okay. Now I already have like almost the length that I have here, right? So maybe I'm just going to stretch it this way. All right, so I'll start rolling just to get the clay moving. Again, standing up is really helpful for this. So I can put my full body weight into the clay. I'm just going to roll it a few different directions, trying to stretch it wider. Okay, Okay, so now that I got the clay close to the thickness I want, I can start to kind of trim and use my measuring sticks. So you can use whatever tool. Here's a knife tool. I'm going to cut off a bit of the edges here. Just to see, and then you can use your paper to see if you're getting close, and that for me is pretty close. Okay, so now I might bring in my measuring sticks here just to make sure that I'm about right. Okay, nothing's too thick. Again, this doesn't have to be really that perfect. We're just not wanting like super thick spots and super thin spots. So if this isn't like perfect, that's just fine. Okay, but that's feeling pretty good. Okay, now how do we get our drawing onto our clay? So you can actually do either way. You can put it on this way or you can put it on this way. It doesn't really matter. Depends on which direction you want your animal, so you can flip it if you want to. Okay, so I'll put it on this way. And I'll just kind of have it lay flat on the clay. And then I'm just gonna grab just a pencil, and this should be pretty dull. We don't want a super sharp pencil because it'll poke through our paper. But all I want to do is now go over each of my lines really gently. And carefully. What that should do is just that gentle pressure that I'm giving on the clay should give an impression of the animal, the shape that I want, onto my clay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and trace over my whole design, okay? And even fill up some of that extra clay because it's helpful to have extra pieces, right? So I might go over here even though I don't have a shape, and I could even just draw a shape that I maybe will use later. Okay, so I'm going to do the whole design, make sure all of my lines are traced. I can take off my paper. Okay, now if I were to try to cut this clay is really soft right now, so it would get pretty mushy. So I'm not going to cut it right away. All right, depending on how much time you have in class, if you have maybe 30 minutes, you can take a heat gun and give this maybe, I don't know, 2-3 minutes, or the hair dryer. Try to stiffen this up a bit, and then we can actually start cutting this out. To cut this out, I'd want to use a needle tool, okay? And so this, we'd want to hold vertically, not diagonally, and hold vertically to cut out your shapes, okay? And that would be a lot of work if you got that done in a day. So I'd say if you're getting to that stage, you're probably rushing and not taking the care that we need. So I would slow down if you're getting to that place where you're getting all of your pieces cut out, okay? But if we can accomplish that today, if you're starting with your animal mosaic, I think that's a great start. Remember, what we're gonna do is you're gonna take your paper off, all right? You're gonna put your whole mat. You can keep the clay right on the mat. We're gonna put that on a board, black plastic over the whole thing to wrap it and store it, and it goes on the back shelf to be stored, and then we can pick up again next week, okay? Great, so good luck if you're starting with this, and looking forward to seeing what you create.